I knew it. I knew it. He meant it. He said it and he meant it. I should probably be honest. I didn't like him much at first. All that attention he got, he didn't even have to carry his own cross all the way to that place. All those women following behind him, weeping and wailing. And then there were those shouts, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" It all just made me sick. You know, it was bad enough I was going to die. It was bad enough I knew I deserved the punishment. I had come to terms with that. I was a thief. I made my living by taking things that belonged to other people. Why shouldn't my life be taken from me as a punishment? Now I couldn't even face that punishment in peace. Jesus was his name. At least that's what I had heard. To me, he was just another guy. Well, at least at first. And at the time, he was the guy who was making my last hours more miserable than they already were. There was no getting away from him either. I was stuck with him, right to the very end. Well, there were three of us who had to make that walk of shame. Two of us had to carry our own crosses, by the way. And as we were walking along, all of a sudden we stopped. And I remember feeling the weight on my back. I remember feeling the splinters digging in and just thinking, hurry up already, would you? Let's get this over with. And then I heard him. I heard that guy, and so I turned as much as I could, and I saw him talking. He was talking to those women behind him, and he said to them, "Don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves and for your children." What was that? Who was this guy? I mean, here he is on his way to be executed, and he's telling these people to cry for themselves, that they have it worse off? I just kind of looked at him for a few seconds with this mixture of disgust and confusion. And then I noticed. I noticed his tattered clothes and the blood stains. I noticed those beads of blood on his forehead. And I just shook my head a little bit. I guess all that beating had taken more than a physical toll. And the guy was obviously losing it. Well, we kept on our way, and eventually we made it to that place, Golgotha, they called it, the place of the skull. And to tell you the truth, a lot of what happened next is kind of cloudy. I mean, I know I was up in the air, and it must have hurt, but that pain just kind of seems so far away now. I don't remember it. What I do remember, though, is what that guy said next, because, you know, he had this way of saying things that were so out of this world. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing." I couldn't believe it. What was that? Forgiveness for these people? Who was this guy? You know, I wanted to let him have it. I wanted to open my mouth up and just say, "Hey, buddy, these guys, they know exactly what they're doing. They're Roman soldiers. They're professionals. They're paid to kill you." But instead, I just kept my mouth shut. And I thought about what he said a little bit. Forgiveness. You know, that's something that had been missing in my life. Plenty of mistakes, plenty of guilt, plenty of punishment, but forgiveness? Could somebody like me really be forgiven too? You know, I kept thinking about his words. I kept wondering how he could talk about forgiveness. I kept wondering if I could be forgiven for all of those things that I had done. I started to feel pretty sorry for myself until I looked over at him. That guy knew pain. It seemed like even God was striking him and afflicting him. It seemed like God was punishing him. Why? You know, I had worked the streets for a long time. I knew a bad egg when I saw one. I knew how the criminal mind worked, and let me tell you, that guy, he was no criminal. He cared way too much about people. Turns out the people didn't care much for him. So many people despised him and rejected him. So many walked by and they hurled their insults at him. Save yourself if you're God's Messiah. Messiah. It sounded familiar, like something I had heard before, but I couldn't put two and two together right away. Now, the soldiers, they had their fun with him too. It wasn't bad enough they'd already beaten him to a bloody pulp. Now they sat down there and they laughed as they gambled for his clothes. And they insulted him too. They shouted up to him. They said, "Save yourself if you are the King of the Jews." That's right. King of the Jews. God had promised to send a king to save his people. Is that who this guy was? All of a sudden, I wasn't so jealous of all that attention he was getting. Apparently, he wasn't going to get to die in peace either. You know what? Even that other criminal on the cross didn't leave him alone. This other criminal who was a thief was being punished. He had the nerve to heckle him. He said, "Aren't you the chosen one? Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." Selfish pig. I mean, hadn't he been watching? Hadn't he been listening to all that was happening? This guy didn't deserve the punishment. He hadn't done anything wrong. Now, I'm no judge, and I may not be the brightest person, but let me tell you, a guilty man does not forgive people while they're nailing him to a cross. You know, I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. This time I had to speak up. I had to let the guy have it. And so I said, "Don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence? We're punished justly. We deserve what's happening to us, but this guy, this king, he hasn't done anything wrong." And then I remembered the words that the king had said earlier. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing." And let me tell you, my heart started to pound. I knew exactly what I had been doing. I knew each time I took something that didn't belong to me that it was wrong. I was guilty. I deserved to be punished. I didn't deserve any peace. I didn't deserve forgiveness. But if this guy, this king, could forgive all of these people, then maybe he could forgive me too. What did I have to lose, right? I didn't have much energy left by then, but I spoke to him and I said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." That's all I could muster by then. And you know what? He couldn't do much better. He couldn't turn his head to look at me. He couldn't even lift up his face, but he spoke to me. The king spoke to me. "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." He meant it. You know, the king said it, and he meant it. Forgiveness, even for me. Has he said anything like that to you? Has the king spoken to you? Has he said anything about forgiveness, about life, about peace, about him being with you? Well, you can be sure of one thing. If he said it, if the king said it, then he meant it.